Stoneman wasted no time. With a mighty cry, he charged at Ibonia, his war axe gleaming green with an unnatural light. He swung the weapon with deadly force, but Ibonia was quicker. The two clashed, their blows shaking the earth and sending shockwaves through the square. The villagers fled in terror.
Welcome to Timbuktu, where legends and stories of old come alive. Today, we bring you the tale of Ibonia, a fearless hero on a daring quest to reclaim his bride, the joy-giving girl. With powerful talismans, shape-shifting battles, and a destiny written in the stars, this epic is not one to miss. Let's dive into the magic of Ibonia's epic adventures.
The morning was still and heavy, the air thick with the promise of challenges ahead. Ibonia stood at the edge of the valley, his talismanic chain gleaming faintly in the dawn light. Each piece, a crocodile's tooth, a savage bull's horn, and others, seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as though urging him forward. The chain, passed down through generations of warriors, had never failed those who wielded it, yet its weight was a constant reminder of the burdens he bore. Behind him stood his companions, the twins, their faces clouded with concern. "Ibonia," one twin said, stepping forward. "This journey does not have to be yours alone. Let us fight beside you. Many Palms is no ordinary land. It is said that those who venture there rarely return." Ibonia turned to them, his gaze firm yet kind. "This is a path the gods have laid for me alone. Your loyalty has brought me this far, but now you must return to the Valley of the Baobabs. Should I fail, carry word of my deeds to our people." The twins hesitated, exchanging a glance that spoke of their reluctance to leave him. "If the gods will it," one murmured, his voice heavy with resignation. They stepped back, their figures soon fading into the hills. Ibonia turned toward the horizon, where the dense forest of many palms loomed like a wall of shadows. The talismans at his chest glimmered faintly, their power stirring in response to his resolve. With a deep breath, he leapt forward, his steps so swift and powerful they seemed to defy gravity. Each leap brought him closer to his destiny, the earth trembling faintly beneath his feet. By midday, he reached the edge of the great river that separated many palms from the rest of the land. The river was no mere stream, it was a tempest, its waters raging and roaring like a living beast. Mist rose from the surface, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay. From its depths rose a hulking shadow, which soon revealed itself to be a hippo of monstrous proportions. Its eyes burned like embers, and its massive tusks gleamed in the sunlight. "Who dares approach this river?" the hippo bellowed, its voice echoing like distant thunder. "Do you seek death, mortal? Yesterday, 100 cattle and 1,000 men attempted to cross these waters, but none succeeded. And now you, alone, wish to try?" Ibonia stood his ground, his expression unflinching. "I am Ibonia. I will cross." The hippo roared in laughter, the sound reverberating through the surrounding cliffs. "Then let your bones sink to the riverbed." The beast lunged, its jaws wide, but Ibonia moved with the swiftness of lightning. With a single decisive blow from the back of his hand, he struck the hippo's snout. The impact sent a shockwave through the water, and the hippo reeled in surprise. "You are no ordinary man," the hippo grumbled, its voice tinged with reluctant admiration. "Climb onto my back then, but know this, your journey has only begun." As the hippo ferried him across the river, the waters grew darker, and a sleek shadow began to circle beneath them. A shark emerged, its fins slicing through the waves like a blade. Its eyes, black and pitiless, fixed on Ibonia. "You will not cross here," the shark hissed, its voice sharp and menacing. "These waters belong to me. Yesterday, 100 cattle and 1,000 men." "To cross, yes," Ibonia interrupted, his tone dismissive. "I will cross." The shark lunged, its teeth gleaming like daggers, but Ibonia, leapt onto its back with astonishing agility. Gripping the beast tightly, he struck with his fists, his blows echoing like drumbeats. The shark thrashed violently, but could not shake him off. Finally, its bones cracked under his relentless assault. "Very well," the shark wheezed, its voice a low rasp. "Climb onto my back, and I will carry you the rest of the way." One by one, the river's guardians submitted, each acknowledging Ibonia's strength and determination. They formed a living bridge, their bodies creating a path through the raging waters. Ibonia stepped onto the far shore, his talismans glowing brightly against his chest. Ahead lay many palms, its towering trees swaying in the wind like silent sentinels. The village was close, but Ibonia knew his trials were far from over. He turned his gaze to the horizon, his resolve unshaken. The outskirts of many palms were eerily quiet, the fields stretching endlessly under the hot afternoon sun. Ibonia, ever cautious, avoided the main paths and instead made his way toward the fields where Old Man, the keeper of Stone Man's lands, toiled. Near the center of the field stood a well, its edges worn smooth by years of use. A massive rock loomed nearby, casting a long shadow over the ground. Ibonia climbed atop the rock and waited, his form blending seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. After some time, Old Man appeared, his gait slow and labored. His back was bent under the weight of years, and his hands trembled as he carried a large water jug. When he reached the well, he paused to catch his breath. As he bent down to draw water, something in the reflection caught his eye. The face staring back at him was not his own. It was youthful, radiant, and noble. "Is this me?" Old Man muttered, his voice tinged with wonder. "Have the gods blessed me with beauty in my old age?" In his astonishment, he dropped the water jug, which shattered upon hitting the ground. Turning away from the well, he hurried back to his house. There, he grabbed a mirror and stared into it, only to see the familiar weathered face he had always known. "No," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The water deceives me." Determined to solve the mystery, he returned to the well and looked around. This time, he spotted Ibonia perched atop the rock, his gaze calm and commanding. "You there?" Old Man called, his voice shaky but curious. "Who are you, and why do you sit here in the fields of many palms?" Stone Man does not welcome strangers. Ibonia leapt down from the rock, his movements fluid and precise. "What I do here is not for Stone Man to decide. Tell me, Old Man, what do you carry to him when you visit?" Old Man hesitated, unsure whether to trust the stranger. But there was something in Ibonia's presence, an aura of authority that made deception impossible. "I bring him ripe bananas, seeds for herbs, and other offerings. He sleeps in the house of Malala, the joy-giving girl, for she feeds him sweet dishes and choice meals." Ibonia nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then let us go to your house and prepare food, as kin might do for one another." Old Man led the way, his steps slow and faltering. Ibonia followed, watching carefully. Once he had memorized Old Man's movements, he struck with precision. Gripping the Old Man by his hair, he ended his life swiftly, discarding his bones and flesh. When the deed was done, Ibonia took the Old Man's skin and donned it like a cloak. Then Ibonia went to the fields and picked several bunches of bananas and other fruits, put them on his back, and made the final journey into the town of many palms. Disguised as Old Man, Ibonia stood before the fields, ready to enter the heart of many palms. The royal compound of many palms was alive with its usual bustle. Young princes and princesses lounged on silken cushions, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Stone Man sat at the center of it all, a towering figure of pride and menace. Beside him sat the king of many palms, his face stern but weary as he watched his son with an approving eye. Between them lay the Fanorana board, its intricate design a stark contrast to the tension in the room. It was into this scene that Ibonia, disguised as Old Man, entered, bearing a basket of ripe fruits and fragrant herbs. His movements were slow, deliberate, as befitted the aged gardener whose skin he wore. Yet, there was a subtle grace in his stride, a hint of something more, that made a few heads turn. The talismans around Stone Man's neck began to rattle, their faint chimes growing louder. "An enemy approaches," they warned, their voices a whisper that only Stone Man could hear. "An enemy?" Stone Man muttered under his breath, glancing toward the entrance. When he saw Old Man, he barked a laugh. "You call this doddering fool an enemy? Perhaps my talismans are broken." Ibonia lowered the basket to the ground near the hearth. The young princes and princesses descended upon it, their hands snatching the fruits with gleeful abandon. They giggled and danced as they always did whenever Old Man brought them gifts. But something about their merriment struck a different chord this time. Was it the precision of Old Man's movements? The quiet authority in his gaze? Stone Man dismissed his unease and waved Ibonia over. "Old Man, it's been years since you've played Fanorana. Come, show us if your hands remember how to move the pieces." Ibonia stepped forward, his face betraying no emotion. He settled himself beside Stone Man, his gnarled fingers hovering over the board. The game began. Stone Man played aggressively, his pieces moving with calculated precision. But Ibonia countered every move effortlessly, his strategy so flawless it seemed almost divine. The first game ended quickly, with Ibonia claiming victory. "Begin again!" Stone Man growled, his pride wounded. They played a second game, then a third. With each defeat, Stone Man's frustration grew, his face darkening like a storm cloud. By the fourth game, the room was silent, the laughter and chatter of the young royals replaced by a hushed awe. When Ibonia claimed victory for the fifth time, Stone Man could no longer contain his rage. "This is no gardener," he roared, slamming his fists onto the board. "How does Old Man know such moves? His hands are meant for weeding fields, not outwitting me at Fanorana. Who are you, imposter?" The King of Many Palms raised a hand, his voice calm but firm. "Enough, Stone Man. Have you forgotten that this man served your grandfather and your father? If his skill surpasses yours, learn from it. Do not let your pride blind you." But Stone Man would not be placated. His talismans rattled furiously now, their warning growing insistent. "This is no Old Man," Stone Man snarled, "and I will prove it." He stormed out of the hall, his movements quick and purposeful. The crowd murmured in confusion, but Ibonia sat still, his disguise unbroken. The tension in the air was palpable, the room waiting to see what Stone Man would do next. The sun had barely risen when the villagers of Many Palms began to gather in the open square. Word had spread of Stone Man's fury and his challenge to the mysterious Old Man who had dared to humiliate him at Fanorana. The tension in the air was palpable, the crowd buzzing with anticipation of the spectacle to come. Stone Man's pride was legendary, but so was his cruelty, and everyone knew that when enraged, he fought with no mercy. The young men of the village were the first to assemble, carrying heavy cross sticks polished to a gleaming finish. This was no simple game. It was a test of strength and skill, where mistakes could mean injury or even death. Stone Man stood at the center of his team, his broad shoulders and imposing stature casting a long shadow over his opponents. His talismans jingled faintly as though mocking his rivals. Ibonia, still disguised as Old Man, arrived quietly, his movements deliberate and unassuming. The villagers whispered among themselves as he approached, some amused by the apparent foolishness of an old man challenging Stone Man, others curious about the confidence in his step. "Let me play with you," Ibonia said, his voice rasping with the weariness of Old Man's disguise. The king of many palms, seated on a high dais at the edge of the square, shook his head in dismay. "Do not do it, old man. Stone Man's rage burns like fire. If you challenge him, he will kill you." But Ibonia remained steadfast. "What is it to you if I am destroyed? Let me face him. My soul is ready for whatever comes." Stone Man smirked, his lips curling in a sneer. "Let him join," he said loudly, his voice echoing across the square. "Let the old fool feel the weight of my wrath." The young men divided into two teams, with Ibonia joining the opposing side. The first rounds of the game were fierce but methodical. Stone Man demonstrated his mastery with every throw, his cross stick soaring through the air like a comet. When it was his turn to catch, his hands moved with such precision that he plucked the sticks from midair effortlessly. When the first team threw at Stone Man, he laughed as the sticks fell harmlessly into his hands. But when Stone Man's turn came to throw, the game turned dangerous. His cross stick, hurled with unrelenting power, ignited the air as it flew. The ground it passed over burst into flames, forcing the other team to scatter in fear. From the sidelines, Ibonia watched intently, his sharp eyes calculating every move. When the fire subsided, he stepped forward, drawing the attention of the crowd. "Now it is my turn," he announced, his voice steady. Stone Man's eyes narrowed. "Do not think you can catch my cross stick," he growled. "It kills what it touches. You will regret this." Stone Man hurled his cross stick with all his might, the force of the throw causing the air to shimmer with heat. The villagers held their breath as the blazing stick hurtled toward Ibonia. But with an effortless motion, Ibonia caught it mid-flight, his hands steady as stone. The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs. Stone Man's face twisted with rage, but before he could respond, Ibonia raised the cross stick high. "Now," he declared, "this is my throw." He hurled the stick with a strength and precision that seemed superhuman. Stone Man caught it, but the impact knocked him off his feet, sending him sprawling to the ground. His knees, elbows, and sides bore the brunt of the blow, leaving him battered and humiliated. Stone Man rose to his feet, his talismans jingling with fury. "Enough of these games," he roared. "This is no old man, it is someone else, and I will destroy him." Ibonia straightened, his disguise falling away to reveal his true form. The crowd gasped, recoiling in awe and fear. "I am Ibonia," he declared, his voice resonating with power. "The baneful bridegroom. I have come to reclaim Malala, the joy-giving girl who is mine by right." Stone Man wasted no time. With a mighty cry, he charged at Ibonia, his war axe gleaming green with an unnatural light. He swung the weapon with deadly force, but Ibonia was quicker. The two clashed, their blows shaking the earth and sending shockwaves through the square. The villagers fled in terror as the battle intensified. Stone Man's strikes were relentless, each one aiming to crush Ibonia into the ground. One blow landed hard, driving Ibonia into the earth up to his knees. But Ibonia, summoning the power of his talismans, rose again, his strength undiminished. "Completely raw, single trunk, leafless red," Ibonia cried, invoking his talismans. They glowed with an unearthly light, their power coursing through him. He struck back, driving Stone Man into the ground up to his thighs. Stone Man roared in frustration and transformed into a massive kite, his wings slicing through the air as he dove at Ibonia. But Ibonia, unfazed, reached out to grab the kite. Stone Man shifted again, this time becoming a powerful gust of wind that lifted Ibonia into the air. The wind carried Ibonia high before dropping him heavily to the ground. But Ibonia rose once more, his talismans blazing. Stone Man reappeared, axe in hand, and struck again. The blows were so fierce that volcanoes in the distance erupted, their fiery plumes visible even from the village. Ibonia called upon his talismans once more, their power reaching its zenith. With one final mighty blow, he drove Stone Man deep into the earth, his form disappearing entirely. The ground trembled as a great fire erupted, its flames consuming Stone Man completely. As the fire roared, Ibonia stepped into the inferno, his figure silhouetted against the flames. When the blaze subsided, he emerged unscathed, his talismans glowing triumphantly. The villagers, watching in awe, fell to their knees. And thus, it was said, Ibonia, dressed in the flesh of an old man, defeated Stone Man. The silence that followed Stone Man's defeat was deafening. The villagers of Many Palms stared in awe as Ibonia stood triumphant. From the crowd emerged the king of Many Palms, his face a mask of sorrow and disbelief. "Who are you?" the king demanded, his voice trembling. "To destroy my beloved son, the strongest man in the land?" "I am Ibonia," the hero declared, his voice carrying the weight of destiny. "The baneful bridegroom. I was betrothed before I was born, married while still a child. I have come to claim what is mine, Malala, the joy-giving girl." The king's face darkened. "Malala lives under my protection. I will not give her to you." Ibonia stepped forward, his gaze unyielding. "No man commands Ibonia, grandson of the Sky Father. I take what is mine by right." Realizing he had no choice, the king turned and called for Malala. She emerged from the crowd, her beauty radiant, carrying a stringed instrument, the valiha. The villagers gasped, for her presence was as enchanting as the legends had foretold. Malala spoke, her voice steady yet tinged with curiosity. "If you are truly my betrothed, then prove it. Play the valiha, for only he to whom I was promised can master its melody." Ibonia took the instrument from her hands with reverence. Sitting before the assembled crowd, he began to play. The notes flowed like water, each one weaving a spell of enchantment. The villagers listened, spellbound, as the music filled the air. When the final note faded, Malala smiled. "Indeed, you are my prince, the one to whom I was betrothed. I am yours." Hand in hand, Ibonia and Malala departed the village. At the river, at the edge of Many Palms, Ibonia struck the waters with his hand, commanding them to part. The sand beneath was revealed, and they crossed as if on dry land. Malala climbed onto Ibonia's back, and together they leapt across hills until they reached the Valley of the Baobabs. Ibonia's father, the Prince of the Center, and his mother, Ravona, were overjoyed to see their son once more. They were also happy to see his bride. They ordered that a meal that could feed everyone in the Valley of the Baobabs be prepared. And big pots of rice and meat and all sweet things of the world were made. And all the musicians brought out all their best instruments. The skies thundered with the laughter of the Sky Father, who shot his celestial cannons in celebration. And the people partied for 10 days and 10 nights, as they celebrated the wedding of Ibonia and Malala, the joy-giving girl. And there in the Valley of Baobabs, Ibonia and Malala lived happily ever after.
Thank you for joining us on this journey with Timbuktu. If you enjoyed this tale of courage and destiny, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon to never miss wonderful stories from the heart of Africa.